Poppy is one of the central characters of Poppy Playtime. After all, the game is named after her, and she features very heavily in the trailers and marketing materials for the game. But with all that being said, we know next to nothing about this incredibly mysterious character. It seems like the protagonist is going to be working alongside Poppy in Chapter 2, and I'm not exactly convinced that this is necessarily a good thing. In fact, in today's video, I'm going to explore the possibility that Poppy is the most evil character in the entire series. But before we delve into my theory, let's take a recap of what we know of Poppy Playtime and Playtime Co. so far. So Playtime Co. was an incredibly successful toy company. Founded by Elliot Ludwig, this company was incredibly successful. They created toys and other inventions that were far ahead of their time. Inventions such as the Make-A-Friend machine, which were incredibly technologically advanced for the era that it was produced in. This company was so successful that they even allowed tours into the factory, which showed that people were very invested in this company, and it showed how well it was doing. One of the company's main aims was to create the most lifelike toys possible, something that we now know may have been a little bit too successful if we're being honest. But the company also had other agendas. We also know that the company had an orphanage program. They were trying to enrich the lives of orphans and give them a second chance, something that might also contain a much darker agenda, something that we know may have been corrupted into something that went far beyond the bounds of what was originally created. We also know that this very successful company eventually had a downfall. Around 10 years ago, the entire workforce of this factory disappeared overnight, effectively ending the company for good. All of this brings in the protagonist. The protagonist is supposedly an ex-employee, although we don't know exactly what that means yet. The protagonist receives a letter explaining that the staff members haven't gone anywhere, they're all still inside the factory, and to figure out this mystery, we need to find the red door, the door with the poppy painted around it. And that brings us on to Chapter 1 of the game. It was very short and very brief, but the protagonist explores this factory, meets our good friend Huggy Wuggy, narrowly escapes him, and then eventually finds Poppy locked away in this very mysterious area of the factory. And that's pretty much all we have to go on. But the more that I delve into theories of Poppy Playtime, the more that I look for the clues and try and piece this thing together, the more I start to think about Poppy, why we know very little about her, and why she seems just a little bit out of place. So the first thing that I want to talk about in this theory is the idea that Poppy is locked away. We first meet Poppy inside this area of the factory. It's deep in the bowels of the factory. This area is definitely off limits to customers. This is a staff-only area, and it is pretty difficult to get to. In fact, we only got there through this conveyor belt system, which I'm sure is not the proper way of getting into here. But once we are here, we find Poppy locked away in this room. Now, there are a number of things that imply danger to me here. The first one being the fact that Poppy is locked away at all. Now, this might seem like a very obvious point, but Poppy is locked inside a glass case. She seems to be asleep, and I'm not sure if this is some sort of security system or something to keep her asleep. I'm not sure, maybe she was just having a snooze, but either way, she seems to be locked away for some reason. Now, this case seems to be some sort of display case, and it appears to be in a mock-up of a dollhouse. This whole area, in fact, looks like a giant dollhouse. Now, you might think this could be for visitors. We know that they used to do factory tours and that this was for show. After all, we know that Poppy seems to be the most iconic toy of Playtime Co. So maybe this was the original Poppy prototype and people were brought here to have a look at it, almost like a museum, if you will. But that doesn't make sense considering where this is in the factory. So for whatever reason, this Poppy is being contained. Now, there are a number of possible explanations for this. Again, if this is the original prototype, maybe they just wanted to keep her pristine condition. But let's consider an alternative explanation. To somebody in the factory, Poppy is considered dangerous. Now, remember how I said that Poppy is in a red room, and in fact, this whole area has a red Poppy painted around the door, with a number of, let's just say, warnings posted outside. Now, red is very commonly used in storytelling to denote danger. And in fact, it's not just storytelling. In nature, many things that are red are very dangerous. Take, for example, blood. If you see blood, you know something bad probably happened. Also, consider the idea that we use red in traffic lights. There's a reason for that. We react in a very different way to the color red as we do to, for example, the color green. Green is generally seen as a good and positive color, and red is seen as a very dangerous, a very important color, something to watch out for. So again, the idea that Poppy is in a red room should start to raise some red flags. But there's a second part of this that really seems to feel off to me, and that's the idea that it's possible that Huggy Wuggy was trying to stop us getting to Poppy. Now consider when we first meet Huggy. He seems very stationary, although I've pointed out before, he is definitely moving. He is not aggressive. He doesn't seem to want to dissuade us. He doesn't seem to attack us. He seems to, in fact, be pretty cool with us. I'm not exactly sure how or why, but he gives us the key to the next area. But then the next time that we see him, he's very aggressive. He tries to catch us and potentially kill us. Now notice when he does this. He does this after we have the Catbee toy. The Catbee toy that allows us to get through doors. I have a strong suspicion that Huggy Wuggy is trying to stop us getting to Poppy. I mean, look at how desperate he is to try and catch us in the vents. It seems like he's trying to head us off from somewhere. And there are other theories that Huggy Wuggy is a security system for this factory. So he doesn't seem to care that we entered the factory, he only seems to care that we get behind the scenes. So why could it be that Huggy is stopping us from getting to Poppy? Well, there's two potential explanations here. Either one, he's protecting Poppy from us, or another explanation, he's protecting us from Poppy. I know that might seem counterintuitive, but we really don't know in what capacity Huggy has intelligence. We know that he has the ability to make decisions. After all, he chases us through the vents, which probably isn't a pre-programmed condition, but we don't know exactly how intelligent he is. Perhaps he's following just one directive. Maybe he has just a number of objectives that he has to follow. Keep people out of this area, for example. But what if Huggy knows how dangerous Poppy is? And what if he was actually trying to stop us from opening her case? Because once she's free, the entire factory is now in more danger. So let's continue to dig a little bit more deeply in this. Poppy seems innocent. She doesn't seem aggressive, and she in fact greets the protagonist and gives the protagonist in chapter 2 some useful information. She seems like she's on our side, and she seems like she's friendly. But if we look at the origins of Poppy, I don't think that tracks at all. So if you look at the trailer, you can see some snippets of the creation of Poppy. It appears that some sort of human consciousness was transferred into her. We can also see the removal of this voice box, which is covered in blood, very much like the dolls around the factory that are also covered in blood. But alongside this, we also have the message, "Help me, let me go." This is clearly something that wasn't being done voluntarily. This is somebody who is being transferred into a doll, or whatever the process is, we don't entirely know yet. But whatever happened, the creation of Poppy went against somebody's will. It's also possible that Poppy was never a human to begin with. In fact, maybe they just created life from Poppy. Something that many people don't seem to have considered. Perhaps that Poppy was never a human, but she has now been created as a living being. Either way, none of this seems like it was Poppy's choice, and in fact Poppy doesn't seem very happy about it. If we combine this with the fact that we see a very, very sinister scene with Poppy in one of the trailers, this really does seem to imply that Poppy isn't quite as innocent as she first appears. In fact, she seems quite evil in this scene. So let's take the possibility that Poppy was created to be the most lifelike doll. She was created to be living, and in fact the trailer does say that you can have a conversation with Poppy like she was a normal human person. But nobody seems to have considered the fact that Poppy didn't have a say in this. It definitely looks like this was against her will, and we don't know exactly how she feels about that. Although I'm going to be honest, I don't think she feels very positively about it. We also know that Poppy has said in the trailer for chapter 2 that terrible things have happened in this factory, and it's entirely possible that she's referring to things that happened to her. Terrible things happening in the factory, also happening to her. So this leads me on to my next point. What is the motivation of Poppy? What does she want? Well, there could be a number of obvious explanations. My first thought was that she wants to escape this factory. The idea that she couldn't escape by herself, after all she is very small, and we do see that something is going around the factory killing dolls or killing toys. We don't know what that is yet. It could be Huggy, or it could be something else, or it could be multiple things, but we don't exactly know. But something is definitely killing toys, and there's nothing to say that they wouldn't also kill Poppy. So perhaps she wants to escape and she needs the protagonist to do so. Well, if that's the case, well, what would happen when she finally does escape? I mean, she is a living doll. We don't know exactly how yet, but she does seem to have full sentience. She does seem to have a full conversation with the protagonist. She has logic and reasoning. She is therefore sentient, except she's also a doll. Imagine if she was to get out into the real world, how would she live? Somebody would find out. She would have to have some weird Toy Story adventure, but somebody would eventually find out, and I'm sure there are plenty of companies out there that would want to reverse engineer this technology. She would most likely suffer at the hands of human curiosity, something that she's already gone through. So if her plan isn't to escape, then what could it be? My idea is that her plan is revenge. After all, remember what we said earlier, the staff are apparently still in the factory. Maybe we've not seen them yet because we just haven't gotten deep enough into the factory. After all, chapter 2 does look like we're going to be exploring this factory, which seems huge. We also don't know exactly in what capacity the staff are still in the factory. They could be alive, they could be transferred into dolls, we really don't know. But the staff are still there. We know this from the letter. So what if Poppy wants revenge? Revenge for her creation that she didn't choose. We know that the factory has many security measures, and we also know that it's very difficult to get around this factory. For example, just to open this door, we had to craft a catbee, something that required a little bit of planning on our part, and that was us, who is either a human or a large doll, considering that we can carry things around. Poppy is tiny. She might not be able to do that herself. What if Poppy was the person who sent out the letter, hoping to get somebody into the factory, somebody that she could manipulate into getting what she wants? And what she wants, like I've said, is revenge. Consider this. One of Huggy's directives could be to keep Poppy in her place. Consider how Poppy is very surprised that the protagonist actually made it there. She seems very surprised when she says,
"You opened my case."
So she's surprised that we made it there and released her, but then in the trailer for chapter 2, she starts spilling all the secrets about Mommy Longlegs. In fact, listen to how she talks about Mommy Longlegs. She seems to be starting an almost adversarial approach to this character. She starts telling us how dangerous she is, and how she's always watching, and how she doesn't like guests, and so on. Now, this might all be true, but it definitely seems like she's trying to pit us against Mommy Longlegs. Maybe because Mommy Longlegs is also an ex-staff member. Maybe Mommy Longlegs is one of the staff members that Poppy wants to get revenge on, and she's going to use us to get rid of her just like she did with Huggy. We still don't know who wrote the letter and who brought us to this factory, but if it is Poppy that did it, maybe her hopes was that we would interfere just long enough so that she could regain control over the factory. But there is still one lingering question, and that is exactly who is Poppy? Like I said, we don't know if Poppy is a person transferred into a doll, or if she is some sort of genesis, if she has been brought to life with science. And we definitely know that the scientists were working on this goal, and we know that there was some sort of flaw in the scientific process. So who exactly could she be? Well, the most likely explanation at the moment is that Poppy is Stella Graber. After all, we know that Stella Graber talked about wanting to be a child forever, and while I do think that this was just her trying to get the job, it sounds like she was just trying to tell the interviewers what they wanted to hear. Maybe they took it a little bit too literally, and maybe she was the one that was transferred into Poppy. And after all, the voice actress for Stella Graber is the same voice actress as Poppy, which might just be a coincidence. Maybe they just really liked the voice actress so much that they wanted to use her twice, but either way, it could be a connection. But there's also another possibility. Another possibility of exactly who Poppy could be might be something that you're not quite expecting. We do know that Playtime Co. was trying to give another life to orphans. Now again, it's possible that that went too far and they started using these orphans in their experiments, trying to turn them into toys, and it's potentially possible that Poppy was one of those orphans, especially if we consider that this letter that was sent to the protagonist, which could have been sent by Poppy, was misspelt. It was definitely created by somebody who's either not very educated or is young. Whoever wrote this letter knew exactly where Poppy was, wanted to send us towards Poppy, and definitely has some sort of agenda revolving around Poppy. So either that is a completely different character who we've not met yet, or that was Poppy. Either way, it's very interesting that Poppy in the game seems to be very innocent, but the Poppy in the trailers seems very sinister. There's definitely a mismatch here, and unless these are two different Poppies, it seems like this Poppy is very clever and very manipulative. But those are just some speculations about what Poppy could be doing in this factory. I really do hope we get a little bit more of an explanation around Poppy, and if Poppy is evil, I very much look forward to seeing what she's got in store for us, because she is potentially one of the creepiest characters I've ever seen in a horror game of this type. Well, there we go. I hope you did enjoy this theory. If you did, let me know down in the comments below, leave the video a like, and consider subscribing if you want more theories like this one. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.